The morning sun filtered through the kitchen curtains of Lavra Bennett's home in Whitefish, Montana, casting a warm glow on the linoleum floor. It was July 14, 2003, exactly 9 years since her daughter, Sophie, had pedaled off on her blue Schwinn bicycle for a quick trip to the town library, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was 15, studious, and responsible, promising to be back by noon. Lavra had watched from the porch, waving as Sophie's ponytail bounced down the gravel drive. That was the last time she saw her. The police searched for weeks, trails, forests, even Flathead Lake, but found nothing. Volunteers combed the area, but no bike, no backpack, no clues. The case went cold, leaving Lavra with only Sophie's room, untouched, and a yearly memorial organized by her high school. Today, the community would gather again, a ritual of grief and fading hope. Lavra adjusted a framed photo on the table, one of Sophie taken days before her disappearance. Her daughter's bright smile, framed by dark curls, stood out against the backdrop of their backyard, where laundry hung on a clothesline. The memorial was at 8 a.m., hosted at the Whitefish High School auditorium. Lavra had arrived early, setting out mementos, Sophie's library card, a poetry notebook, a silver charm bracelet she'd loved. The auditorium filled with familiar faces, teachers, classmates now grown, neighbors who'd searched tirelessly. Principal Ellen Harper spoke of Sophie's love for literature, her dream of studying at Montana State. Pastor Daniel Klein led a prayer for closure. By 10:30, most attendees had left, but a small group remained. Laura's sister, Rachel, her husband Tom, Sophie's English teacher, Mrs. Clara Evans, and Sheriff Michael Reed, who'd led the initial investigation. Lavra stood by the table, touching Sophie's notebook. 9 years, she said softly. It feels like yesterday. Rachel squeezed her arm. We're still here, Lavra. We won't forget her. Clara Evans, her eyes red, picked up the photo. Sophie was my brightest student. Always stayed late to discuss books. She wanted to write novels someday. Sheriff Reed, his hat in hand, nodded. We never stopped looking, Lavra. Not officially, not in our hearts. The group gathered closer, sharing memories. Rachel lifted a copy of the police report, its edges worn. They searched everywhere, she said. The library, the trails, even dragged the lake. Nothing. Tom frowned, studying the photo. Lavra, this picture, it was taken the morning she left, right? Lavra nodded. She was heading to the library after breakfast. Why? Tom pointed to the clothesline in the background. Look at the laundry. Freshly hung, still damp at the bottoms. Why would you hang clothes if Sophie was just going for a quick ride? Laura's breath caught. She leaned in, noticing a detail she'd overlooked for years. Among the plain shirts and jeans was a bright green scarf, out of place in her simple wardrobe. That scarf, she said, her voice tight. It's not mine or Sophie's, too flashy. Clara's eyes widened. That's Sheriff Reed's scarf. I've seen him wear it on cold days, directing traffic at school events. Reed's face stiffened. My scarf? I must have left it at your place. I stopped by that morning to talk about a vandalism case at the school. Sophie was there, getting her bike ready. Laura's heart raced. You never mentioned visiting, and why would I wash your scarf? Reed's jaw tightened. You were busy in the kitchen. Sophie offered to toss it in with the laundry after I spilled coffee on it. She was always helpful. The group exchanged glances, the air heavy with unease. Rachel spoke up. Michael, you led the investigation. You never said you were at Laura's that morning. Reed shifted, his voice steady but strained. It wasn't relevant. I was there for 10 minutes tops. I reported everything that mattered. Laura's hands trembled. Sophie didn't mention you stopping by. And she wouldn't hang laundry before a bike ride. It'd get dusty on the trails. Clara's voice was sharp. Why didn't you ask for your scarf back? It's been 9 years. Reed's eyes flickered. I forgot about it. It wasn't important. But Lavra saw a bead of sweat on his forehead, despite the cool auditorium. "I packed Sophie's things after the first year," she said. "The scarf might still be at the house. I'll check." Rachel's eyes narrowed. "And we should talk to the library staff again. Maybe they saw something that day." Pastor Klein, who'd been quiet, spoke softly. "Lavra, be careful. We trust God's plan, but this feels wrong. If Sheriff Reed was there, maybe there's more he knows." Lavra nodded, resolve hardening. "I'll find the scarf and ask Michael about it. If there's a clue, I need to know." The group lingered, handling Sophie's mementos, a poem she'd written, a library bookmark, the charm bracelet. Each item was passed with care, accompanied by a memory or prayer. As noon approached, they dispersed, promising to reconvene at church the next day. Lavra drove home with Rachel, the photo and police report in her purse. At her house, she searched the closet where she'd stored Sophie's belongings. In a cardboard box, beneath a folded sweater, was the green scarf, clean and neatly folded. Laura's hands shook as she held it. Why had Sophie washed it? Why had Reed never asked for it back? She called his cell, but it went to voicemail. "Sheriff Reed, it's Lavra Bennett. I found your scarf at my house. We need to talk about that morning. Call me." She hesitated, then ended the call. Confronting him in person felt safer. Lavra drove to the Whitefish police station, the scarf in her purse. The receptionist, Officer Daniels, looked up. "Sheriff Reed's out on patrol," he said. "Try back tomorrow." Laura's stomach nodded. "Where's he patrolling? It's urgent." Daniels shrugged. "Probably near the rural roads," he sighed. "He's been out there a lot lately." Laura's unease grew. Sophie's bike route was east, toward the library. She drove that way, passing fields and pine groves, until she spotted Reed's patrol car near a trailhead. She parked and approached, clutching her purse. Reed was alone, leaning against his car, a map spread on the hood. "Lavra," he said, startled, folding the map quickly. "What brings you out here?" She held up the scarf. "This. You left it at my house the morning Sophie disappeared." "Why didn't you tell me you were there?" Reed's face tightened. "I told you, it was a quick visit, vandalism case." "Sophie was fine when I left." Laura's voice sharpened. "She hung laundry, including your scarf, then vanished." "That doesn't add up, Michael." Reed's eyes darted to the trees. "You're upset, Lavra. I get it. But don't make this into something it's not." Before she could respond, a black SUV pulled up, and two men in dark jackets, no badges, stepped out. Lavra recognized one from a recent town meeting about land development. "Sheriff," the man said, ignoring Lavra, "we need to talk about the Bennett property." Reed's face paled. "Not now, Greg." Laura's heart raced. "The Bennett property, my land?" The man, Greg, glanced at her, then back at Reed. "We'll talk later." He and his partner drove off, leaving Lavra staring at Reed. "What was that about?" she demanded. Reed's voice was tight. "Just business. Developers want land out here. I'm handling it." But Laura saw the lie in his eyes. The scarf, the visit, the developers, something was connected to Sophie. She needed answers, and she wasn't stopping until she had them. Lavra Bennett's hands trembled as she gripped the green scarf, standing by Sheriff Michael Reed's patrol car near the trailhead east of Whitefish, Montana. The September sun filtered through the pines, casting dappled shadows on the gravel, but the warmth did little to ease the chill in her bones. The scarf, found in her laundry, belonging to Reed, who'd been at her house the morning Sophie vanished in 1994, was a tangible link to her daughter's disappearance. His evasive answers, the black SUV with the developers, and their mention of the Bennett property had ignited a fire in Laura's chest. 9 years of grief and unanswered questions had led to this moment, and the confrontation with Reed was only the beginning. "What do you know about Sophie?" she demanded, her voice sharp. Reed folded the map he'd been studying, his eyes darting to the road where the SUV had disappeared. Lavra, you're upset. I understand. But I told you, I was at your house for a vandalism case. Sophie was fine when I left. Lavra stepped closer, holding up the scarf. You never mentioned being there. And now developers are talking about my land? What's going on, Michael? Reed's jaw tightened, a bead of sweat visible despite the cool air. It's just business. Developers are always sniffing around out here. I'm keeping them in check. Don't make this into something it's not. Laura's gut screamed that he was lying. The scarf, the laundry hung on the morning of a quick bike ride. Reed's presence at her house. It didn't add up. And the way he'd brushed off the developer's mention of her property felt too calculated. I'm going to the state police, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I don't trust you, Michael. Reed's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, his radio crackled. Sheriff, we need you at the station. Urgent. He hesitated, then forced a smile. Go home, Lavra. Let me handle this. I'll call you about the scarf. He climbed into his patrol car and sped off, leaving Lara alone with her suspicions. She drove home, her mind churning. Sophie's library trip, the scarf, the developers, it was all connected, and Reed was at the center. She needed evidence, something concrete to take to the authorities. At home, Lara called her sister Rachel, who lived in Kalispell, 15 miles away. Rachel, I need you to come over. I found something about Sophie, and Reed's involved. Rachel's voice was sharp with concern. What happened? Are you okay? Lavra recounted the confrontation, the scarf, and the developers. I'm digging through Sophie's things again. There might be more clues. Can you bring Tom? I don't want to be alone if Reed comes back. Rachel promised to be there in 20 minutes. Lavra went to Sophie's room, untouched since 1994, a shrine to her daughter's absence. The purple comforter, the desk with its neat stack of books, the charm bracelet on the dresser, all frozen in time. She opened the desk drawer, pulling out Sophie's planner, a spiral-bound book filled with her daughter's precise handwriting. Sophie had been meticulous, scheduling library visits, study sessions, and her part-time job at the local bookstore. Lavra flipped to July 1994, searching for anything unusual. An entry on July 10th caught her eye. Met Sheriff R after school. Asked about land stuff. Felt weird. Laura's breath hitched. Sophie had met Reed days before she vanished. Why hadn't she mentioned it? Another entry, July 12th. Library late. Sheriff R there, talking about safety. Gave me his scarf to hold. Said he'd get it later. Laura's hands shook. Reed had lied. He'd seen Sophie multiple times that week, not just the morning she disappeared. Rachel and Tom arrived, their faces tense. Lavra showed them the planner. Sophie met Reed before she went missing. He never told me. And today, developers mentioned our land like it's part of some deal. Tom, a former surveyor familiar with local land disputes, frowned. Developers have been circling Whitefish for years, wanting to build resorts and highways. Your property's prime. It's near the main road and borders the forest. If Reed's involved, it could be big. Rachel's eyes narrowed. We need to talk to someone outside the local police. The state troopers, maybe. But first, let's search the house again. If Sophie left that scarf, there might be more. They combed through Sophie's room, finding a small locked diary under her mattress. Lavra pried it open with a paperclip, her heart pounding. The entries were sparse but revealing. July 8, 1994. Sheriff R keeps asking about Mom selling the land. Says it's for a good cause, but Dad told me never to trust land deals. Don't like how he looks at me. July 13th. Reed was at the library again. Said he's watching out for me, but it feels off. Told me to keep his scarf safe, like a secret. Meeting him tomorrow morning before library. Laura's blood ran cold. Sophie had been uneasy about Reed, and her last entry mentioned meeting him the day she vanished. Lavra drove to the state police post in Kalispell, the diary and scarf in her purse. Sergeant David Carter, a no-nonsense officer with a reputation for fairness, listened as she explained everything: the scarf, the planner, the diary, and Reed's evasive behavior. "These are serious allegations, Mrs. Bennett," Carter said, his voice calm but firm. "Sheriff Reed's respected in Whitefish, but we'll look into it. The land development angle is concerning. We've had reports of aggressive developers in the area." He took copies of the diary entries and promised to investigate. "Stay safe and don't confront Reed again until we have more." Lavra nodded, but her resolve was unshaken. She'd go back to the trailhead where Reed had been, see if there were clues he'd overlooked. The next morning, Lavra drove to the trailhead, parking near where Sophie's bike route began. The area was quiet, the forest dense with pines and cedars. She walked the path Sophie would have taken, her eyes scanning for anything unusual. Near a bend in the trail, she noticed fresh tire tracks, too wide for a car, likely an SUV like the one she'd seen with the developers. Following the tracks, she found a small clearing, where a pile of disturbed earth caught her eye. It looked recently dug, the soil loose and unmarked by grass. Her heart raced. Had something been buried here? She called Sergeant Carter, who promised to send a team. As she waited, a black SUV approached, the same one from yesterday. Two men stepped out, their faces hard. "Mrs. Bennett," one said, his voice cold. "You shouldn't be here." Lavra backed away, her phone still in hand. "I'm not alone. The police are coming." The men exchanged glances, then retreated to their SUV and sped off. Laura's legs shook, but she held her ground until Carter's team arrived. The state police searched the clearing, uncovering a metal box buried shallowly. Inside were documents, land surveys, bank records, and a list of names, including Reed's and a company called Flathead Development Group. A note in an unknown hand read, "Bennett Land Critical. Remove obstacles. Payment secured." Carter's face darkened. "This suggests a conspiracy. Reed's name on these documents is damning. We'll bring him in for questioning." Laura's mind spun. Was Sophie an obstacle? Had Reed done something to her to secure the land? She drove home, the documents' implications haunting her. That evening, she met with Rachel and Tom at her kitchen table, now a hub for their investigation. "The developers wanted our land," Lavra said. Sophie knew something. She wrote about Reed's pressure. Maybe she saw too much. Tom nodded. "Flathead Development's been buying up properties quietly. Your land's the last piece for their highway project." If Sophie was a threat, Rachel's voice was fierce. "We need to find her. If she's alive, she's out there, and Reed knows where." Lavra returned to Sophie's diary, searching for more clues. An entry from July 5th stood out. "Met Mr. Grayson at library. Asked about land laws." Said to be careful of Sheriff R. Mr. Grayson was Sophie's history teacher, known for his interest in local politics. Lavra called him, her voice urgent. "Mr. Grayson, this is Lavra Bennett. Did Sophie talk to you about land deals or Sheriff Reed before she disappeared?" Grayson's tone was grave. "Yes, she came to me at the library. Said Reed was asking her about your property, trying to get her to convince you to sell. I told her to be cautious. Reed had a reputation among some teachers for being too cozy with developers. I wish I'd done more." Laura's heart sank. "Why didn't you tell the police?" Grayson sighed. "I did, but Reed was leading the investigation. He brushed it off, said Sophie was just confused. I should have gone higher." Lavra organized a volunteer meeting the next day, rallying Sophie's teachers and friends. Grayson attended, his face lined with guilt. "I failed Sophie," he said, "but I'll help now." She mentioned a cabin near the library trail, said Reed pointed it out as a safe spot if she ever needed to hide. Laura's pulse quickened. A cabin? She shared this with Carter, who pinpointed a remote cabin owned by Flathead Development, 2 miles from the trailhead. "We'll search it," Carter promised. But stay back, Lavra. If Reed's involved, it's dangerous. Lavra agreed, but couldn't stay idle. She drove to the library trail, parking a mile away to avoid detection. Using a map from Tom, she hiked toward the cabin, staying off the main path. The forest was thick, the air heavy with pine. As she neared the coordinates, she saw the cabin, a small modern structure, its windows boarded. Tire tracks matched the SUVs. Her heart pounded as she crept closer, peering through a gap in the boards. Inside, she saw a desk, textbooks, and Sophie's purple backpack, the one she'd taken that morning. Laura's breath caught. She called Carter, whispering, "I'm at the cabin. Sophie's backpack is here." Before he could respond, a car engine rumbled nearby. Lavra hid behind a tree as Reed's patrol car pulled up. He stepped out, carrying a bag, and entered the cabin. Laura's heart raced. She needed to see more, but couldn't risk being caught. She backed away, dialing Carter again. "Reed's here, at the cabin. Hurry." As she retreated, a figure emerged from the trees, her niece, Emily, Rachel's daughter, now 20. "Aunt Lavra." Emily whispered, her face pale. "I know where Sophie is. She's alive, but she's not herself. I've been watching this place, and I have proof." Lavra Bennett's heart pounded as she crouched behind a pine tree near the remote cabin in the Whitefish, Montana forest, her niece Emily's words echoing in her mind. "I know where Sophie is. She's alive, but she's not herself. I've been watching this place, and I have proof." The September air was cool, but sweat beaded on Laura's forehead as she watched Sheriff Michael Reed enter the cabin, a bag in hand, just moments after she'd spotted Sophie's purple backpack through a boarded window. Emily, Rachel's 20-year-old daughter, stood beside her, her face pale but resolute, clutching a small notebook. The distant wail of sirens signaled the state police were approaching, alerted by Laura's call to Sergeant David Carter. "Emily," Lavra whispered, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, not herself? What's happening to Sophie?" Emily's eyes glistened with tears. "I've been watching this cabin for weeks, Aunt Lavra. I saw Sophie through the window once. She's alive, but she's different. Reed's been keeping her here, making her do things like writing reports, studying, as if she's still in school. I think he's brainwashed her." Sergeant Carter's state police SUV roared into the clearing, followed by 2 more units. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn but pointed down, surrounding the cabin. Lavra and Emily emerged from the trees, waving to get Carter's attention. "Sergeant, my daughter's in there," Lavra called, her voice breaking. "Reed's with her now." Carter, his face grim, nodded and gestured for them to stay back. "Mrs. Bennett, Miss Harper, we'll handle this. Stay safe." He barked orders, and officers approached the cabin, one announcing through a megaphone, "Sheriff Reed, this is the Montana State Police. Come out with your hands up." The cabin door creaked open, and Reed stepped out, his hands raised, his face a mask of forced calm. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, his voice steady but strained. "I'm just checking the property for vagrants." Carter's eyes narrowed. "Step away, Sheriff. We have reason to believe Sophie Bennett is inside." Reed's composure faltered, his eyes darting to the trees where Lavra stood. Before he could speak, an officer tackled him, cuffing his wrists as he protested. Laura's heart raced. She needed to see Sophie, to know she was alive. Carter led a team into the cabin, Lavra and Emily following despite his warnings. Inside, the air was stale, the boarded windows casting dim light. The main room held a desk, stacked with textbooks and notebooks, and Sophie's purple backpack, its smiley face patch unmistakable. A narrow staircase led to a basement, and Carter descended, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Lavra gripped Emily's hand, her breath shallow. At the bottom was a steel door, locked from the outside. Carter used Reed's keys, taken from his belt, and opened it, announcing, "Sophie, this is the police. You're safe now." Lavra pushed forward, unable to wait. and saw her daughter sitting at a small desk in a converted root cellar, a pencil in her trembling hand, her dark curls lank and her face pale from years without sunlight. Sophie, now 24, looked up, her eyes hollow but alert. I have to finish my essay," she said, her voice faint. "Sheriff Reed says it's due tomorrow for my college application." Lavra sobbed, rushing to her, but Sophie flinched, clutching her notebook. "Mom, you can't be here. I'll get in trouble." Carter gently guided Lavra back, his voice calm. "She's in shock, Mrs. Bennett. Let us get her out safely." An officer, Deputy Mark Jensen, approached Sophie slowly. "Sophie, you're going home. Your mom's here. You don't have to do any more assignments." Sophie's eyes darted to the door, as if expecting Reed. "But my grades, Sheriff Reed said I'd lose everything if I didn't keep up. He said you didn't want me anymore, Mom." Laura's heart shattered. "Never, Sophie. I looked for you every day." Emily stepped forward, her voice soft. "Sophie, it's Emily, your cousin. He lied to you. We're taking you home." Sophie's gaze softened, recognition flickering, but she clung to her notebook, its pages filled with meticulous writing. Carter's team escorted her out, wrapping her in a blanket as paramedics arrived. Lavra followed, tears streaming, as Sophie was loaded into an ambulance for Whitefish Medical Center. Reed, now in a patrol car, was shouting about a misunderstanding, but the officers ignored him. At the hospital, Lavra sat by Sophie's bed, her daughter's thin frame dwarfed by a hospital gown. Dr. Lisa Morgan, a trauma specialist, examined her, noting malnourishment but no severe physical injuries. "She's been cared for. Physically," Morgan said. "Fed regularly, clean clothes. But the psychological impact is significant. She shows signs of Stockholm Syndrome, believing her captor was protecting her." Lavra clutched Sophie's hand, which remained limp. "What did he do to her?" Morgan hesitated. "Based on her initial statements, Sheriff Reed kept her in that cellar, forcing her to maintain a rigorous academic schedule, essays, exams, college applications. He convinced her it was for her future, that the outside world would reject her. It's a form of control, using her fear of failure." Laura's stomach churned. Sophie, her bright, driven daughter, had been manipulated into believing captivity was her path to success. In a conference room downstairs, Sergeant Carter interrogated Reed, who sat cuffed, his uniform rumpled, his composure gone. "I want to explain," Reed said, his voice desperate. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." Carter activated a recorder. "Start talking, Sheriff." Reed leaned forward, his eyes darting. "I noticed Sophie in '93, helping at a school fundraiser. She was smart, eager to please. Her family was struggling, Laura's divorce, money tight. I saw an opportunity to help." Carter's voice was cold. "Help? You kidnapped her." Reed shook his head. "It wasn't like that. Flathead Development wanted the Bennett land for a highway project. Lavra wouldn't sell. Sophie overheard me talking to their rep, Greg Larson, about pressuring her mom. She started asking questions, digging into land laws with her teacher, Grayson. I couldn't let her ruin everything." He described his plan with chilling clarity. "I knew her routine, Saturday bike rides to the library. I intercepted her on the trail, used chloroform from old police evidence. She woke up in the cabin cellar, a place I'd prepped as a study room. I told her her mom was relieved she was gone, that she'd been classified a runaway. I said I was protecting her, giving her a chance to excel without distractions. She believed me. Her grades were everything to her." Carter's jaw tightened. "You forced her to study, to write essays for 9 years?" Reed's voice cracked. "I wanted her to succeed. I graded her work, gave her rewards, books, snacks for perfect scores. The developers paid me to keep her quiet. They needed the land, and Sophie was a threat. I didn't hurt her, I swear." Carter leaned in. "You kept a child in a cellar, manipulated her into thinking it was for her own good. That's not help, that's a crime." Upstairs, forensic interviewer Dr. Karen Holt sat with Sophie, Lavra watching through one-way glass. Sophie's voice was flat, recounting her routine. Sheriff Reed brought breakfast at 7 o'clock, cereal, sometimes fruit. I studied English until 10 o'clock, then math, science in the afternoon. He graded my essays at night, said I was on track for Montana State. If I got a B, he'd take away my books for a day. I had to be perfect. Holt's tone was gentle. Did you ever try to leave? Sophie's eyes widened. Where would I go? He said Mom didn't want me, that I'd fail out there. He showed me articles about runaways, said I'd be one if I left. My grades were all I had. Lavra sobbed, her sister Rachel holding her. He used her dreams against her, Rachel whispered. Her need to make Lavra proud. Emily, standing nearby, handed over her notebook. Aunt Lavra, I've been watching the cabin since I found it last month. I saw Sophie through the window, writing. I took photos, kept notes. I was scared to tell anyone, reads the sheriff. But when I heard about the scarf, I knew it was time. Carter joined them, his face grim. Emily's evidence is gold. Photos, dates, even a recording of Reed entering the cabin. Combined with Sophie's diary and the documents from the trailhead, we've got enough to charge Reed with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy. The developers, Larson and his partner, Tom Klein, are in custody. They're talking, implicating a network of land grabs across Montana. Laura's voice trembled. Why our land? Carter unrolled a map. Your property's the last piece for a highway connecting Whitefish to a planned resort. They've been buying out families for years, using intimidation when money failed. Reed was their enforcer, paid to pressure the community and silence anyone who resisted, like Sophie. Emily's voice was fierce. She fought back in her way. She kept writing, kept studying, because she believed it would get her home. The hospital room was quiet as Laura sat with Sophie, who clutched a new notebook, her fingers tracing the edges. Mom, did I ruin my chances for college? She whispered. Sheriff Reed said I had to keep up or I'd lose everything. Laura's tears fell as she held her daughter. You're safe now, Sophie. That's all that matters. We'll figure out college together. Dr. Morgan explained Sophie's recovery would be long. Years of therapy to undo Reed's manipulation, to rebuild her sense of self beyond grades and assignments. But her physical health was stable, and her mind, though scarred, was sharp. She's a fighter, Morgan said. She survived by clinging to her work. That resilience will carry her forward. The FBI raided Flathead Development's offices, seizing records that exposed a decade-long scheme to acquire rural land for profit. Reed faced life without parole, his badge a mockery of the trust he'd betrayed. Larson and Klein were charged with conspiracy and accessory to kidnapping, their empire crumbling as more victims came forward, other families pressured or silenced. Lavra organized a community vigil at the high school, where Sophie's teachers and friends gathered to welcome her home. Principal Harper announced a scholarship in Sophie's name for students overcoming adversity. Grayson, the history teacher, spoke of Sophie's courage, his voice breaking as he apologized for not doing more. Lavra stood with Sophie at the vigil, her daughter's hand in hers, still clutching the notebook. Emily, now a hero in the community, shared her photos and notes, ensuring Reed's crimes were fully exposed. Pastor Klein led a prayer for healing, and Lavra felt a peace she hadn't known in 9 years. Sophie's recovery would be a journey, but she was alive, her spirit unbroken despite Reed's attempts to cage it. As they left the vigil, the Montana sky stretched wide, stars bright above the pines. Lavra looked at Sophie, her face soft in the moonlight. You're home, she whispered. Sophie's smile was small but real. I kept studying for you, Mom. Lavra pulled her close, tears falling. You're enough, just as you are. The nightmare was over, the truth laid bare, and Sophie's future, though uncertain, was hers to reclaim.
Thank you for watching our channel Modern Stories. If you liked our video, you should subscribe for more amazing videos like this. Have a healthy and happy day. See you in the next one.